This is a striking story. 18-year-old Tony Farmer should have been sitting through basketball scholarship offers and choosing which college to attend. But instead, he stood before a judge, convicted on charges of kidnapping and felonious assault. Upon hearing his sentence, 3 years in prison to be served concurrently, the 6'7" wingman collapsed and proceeded to sit on the floor in shock. A rather hard-hitting image considering how bright his future had looked. Farmer's fall is only one of the many insane responses to court sentencing that can be found online. Some are violent, some are hilarious, others terrifying, and all of course are on YouTube. So, just for you all, we've gone through and picked out the 10 craziest reactions to court sentencings. There's a saying, don't do the crime if you can't do the time. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos. Enjoy! Number 1. Brian NOVAL. NOVAL was initially given 60 days in prison, but upon hearing that he was to be held without bail, he responded by calling the judge a cock.
So what did you just say when you walked away?
I called you a because you're...
Woo! Among other names, Hurley wasn't having it, and he called NOVAL back so he could threaten to hold him in contempt of the court. NOVAL promptly apologized, but continued that he wasn't sentenced with the same charges the day prior, which is why he's confused. Hurley accepts and reiterates NOVAL's original sentence of 60 days in prison should be over, but no surprise, NOVAL's still not happy. He asks if he can take the cop back, causing Hurley to call him back before the court and adding on 60 more days to his sentence before being an idiot. At this, NOVAL finally leaves, while muttering that he, quote-unquote, didn't know the judge could do that. Yeah, we couldn't tell.
Do you have anything else you'd like to say?
Number 2. LATASHA Williams. 36-year-old LATASHA Williams' reaction to an officer attempting to take her into custody. We can safely say we understand why the courts were questioning her mental stability at this particular hearing. Williams was facing charges of child endangerment and kidnapping after she allegedly threatened 2 children at a Vegas apartment complex. In a footage of a mental health hearing, Williams can be seen speaking calmly to the judge, until an officer approaches her to take her into custody. She proceeds to lose it, and what follows is a full-on brawl that left one officer with a cut on his face and a knee injury that had to be treated at a local hospital. Number 3. Juan Rodriguez. There are reasonable ways to plead for a judge's mercy, but we gotta say, this is not one of them. During his trial, where he was being convicted for stabbing a nurse at a mental health facility, Juan Rodriguez made a last-ditch effort at freedom by threatening to kill the judge if she didn't let him out of jail for Hashanah, because he is Jewish. Gold star for trying? No surprise. It didn't work, and the judge ordered that he be held without bond on the first-degree attempted murder charge.
If you don't let me out of here, I'm gonna fucking kill you. I'm gonna take your fucking life if you don't let me out of here. Okay? I'm done. Now let's eat breakfast. The mama's cooking.
Number 4. Andrew Worth. 25-year-old Andrew Worth was eventually charged with first-degree murder and sentenced to 10 years in prison for killing an off-duty police officer and her boyfriend outside of a bar in Wisconsin. But his crazy reaction wasn't actually in response to that. It instead occurred earlier, when the judge set his bail at $1 million. Worth to the point where he has to be subdued by an electronic stun gun before being carried out of the courtroom. Number 5. Michael Gaines. This is a man with nothing to lose. After being convicted of battery for assaulting 2 police officers by allegedly spitting on both their faces while being held at Sedgwick County Jail, Michael Gaines was sentenced to 13 years in prison. He responded by launching into a rant in which he curses out the judge and the prosecutor, cries suppression, and informs the court that he will raise his voice at anyone who raises their voice at him. Unsurprisingly, this didn't go down well with the judge, and officers escorted him out of the courtroom while he called the prosecutors a maggot who should have died when he was a baby. Charmed, we are sure. Number 6. Anthony Allen. It's difficult to flip people off in handcuffs, so Anthony Allen settled for reading off a prepared statement, in which he called the judge both unprofessional and desperate. The impromptu essay reading took place just before the judge sentenced Allen to 25 years to life for the murder of a group home worker who he allegedly beat to death in upstate New York.
Minutes later, the judge labeled him a monster.
Number 7. MARCIAL Anguiano. After being sentenced to 40 years in prison, 47-year-old MARCIAL Anguiano took a razor blade to his neck and sliced his throat right in the courtroom before the judge. Anguiano was facing the sentence after pleading guilty to aggravated assault for cutting his niece with a butcher's knife. He was taken to an area hospital after the apparent suicide attempt and treated for the wound, as it only cut muscle and didn't hit any arteries. He was fine after receiving the medical attention. Number 8. Erica Mae Butts and Shanita Latrice Cunningham. Erica and Shanita barely heard the end of their sentencing, life in prison for the murder of a toddler, because they simultaneously collapsed and began screaming and hyperventilating. The women, who are lovers, were convicted for the crime of beating 3-year-old Serenity Richardson to death in 2019 while was in their care, so brutally that the judge reportedly commented that nothing had ever affected her as strongly as the photos from the crime scene. And to add salt to that gaping wound, Butts was Serenity's mother's best friend and child's godmother. Butts and Cunningham's reaction to the sentencing wasn't the only significant one that took place in the courtroom that day. Upon hearing the verdict, Butts' mother began shouting and screaming to the point where she had to be escorted out of the courtroom. Number 9. SEANDELL Jackson. The 19-year-old was convicted of first-degree intentional homicide and robbery of a 21-year-old University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee film student, Nathan Potter, who he attacked with an accomplice outside Potter's apartment. During the trial and reading of his sentencing, he showed no signs of regret or sorrow over his crimes, even at one point smiling at the victim's family while being escorted out of the courtroom. Number 10. Michael Marin. After being found guilty of arson and facing 7 to 21 years behind bars, Michael Marin was caught on camera in Phoenix, Arizona courtroom, placing his hands over his mouth, in what initially looked like a reaction of shock to his sentencing, before taking a drink from a water bottle sitting on the table in front of him. A few minutes later, he was dead. Post-mortem toxicology tests confirmed that Marin poisoned himself with cyanide after hearing the verdict, which he was able to sneak in with him because he wasn't in custody during his trial and therefore wasn't searched upon entering the courthouse. These are 10 craziest reactions to a court's decision. Let us know what and who were your surprised of the most down in the comment section below. Be sure to subscribe and like our channel for more shocking videos.